The gathering storm. The vastness of space was often a comfort to Captain Marcus Riker, but today the darkness seemed oppressive. The U.S. Prometheus, an aging frigate in the human fleet, patrolled the outer colonies alone, its mission simple: keep watch, report anything unusual, and protect the outposts if necessary. However, what the ship's sensors detected now was far beyond unusual. "Captain, Zorak battle fleet detected entering the sector," reported Lieutenant Chen, her voice tense as she studied the tactical display. ETA 2 hours. Fleet composition: 200 heavy cruisers, 50 dreadnoughts. The scans indicate their command flagship, the Reaper, is at the center. Riker clenched his jaw, his mind racing as he assessed the situation. The Zorak, led by the ruthless warlord Kavos, had already conquered a dozen systems, enslaving and slaughtering billions. Now they were coming for the human colonies. The Prometheus was all that stood between them and 20 million civilians. The frigate, however, was no match for an armada of this size. "We can't let them roll over our colonies," Riker growled, his voice filled with determination. He had a choice: withdraw and warn Earth, leaving the colonies defenseless, or make a stand here and now, no matter the cost. The decision weighed heavily on his shoulders, but there was really no other option. They had to fight. "Lieutenant, and warm up the EMP cannon and ready the cloaking device," Riker ordered, his tone firm. "We strike hard and fast at their flagship. Decapitate the beast. Throw them into chaos." "Sir, that's suicide," An protested, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We can't take on a whole fleet." "We have to try," Riker said, his voice unwavering. "We're the only thing standing between Kavos and those colonies. If we run, they die." The crew manned their battle stations, their faces grim but resolute. They knew the odds, but they also knew what was at stake. The Prometheus was humanity's guardian, and her crew would gladly lay down their lives to stop the Zorak's advance. The enemy was ruthless, but they had underestimated humanity's resolve before, and they would pay dearly for that mistake. As the Zorak fleet approached weapons range, Riker gave the order: "Decloak the ship, power up weapons. Today, we show the galaxy what humans are made of." The Prometheus shuddered as its advanced weaponry came online, the once unassuming frigate now revealed as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Hypervelocity slugs ripped through the void, tearing through the Reaper's shields like tissue paper. Explosions blossomed across the Dreadnought's hull, but the Zorak were quick to respond. Hundreds of ships turned their guns on the lone human frigate, a storm of plasma and missiles streaking toward it. "Brace for impact," Lieutenant Chen yelled, but the crew didn't flinch. The Prometheus weaved through the onslaught, its human pilots guiding it through the chaos with precision and skill. The rail guns fired again and again, each shot surgically crippling the Zorak ship. But for every ship destroyed, a dozen more surged forward, filling the void with their bulk and weapons. The battle was fierce, but Riker knew they couldn't hold out forever. The Prometheus was bleeding, its shields failing, its weapons dwindling. But he also knew they couldn't retreat. They had to make their stand here, no matter the cost. The Zorak fleet would learn that humanity was not so easily crushed, that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they would fight to the last breath. The battle begins. The Prometheus, cloaked and nearly invisible to the enemy, drifted silently through the void. The crew held their breath as the Zorak fleet drew closer. Captain Riker stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice was steady as he issued orders. "Steady, everyone," Riker said, his voice calm but firm. "Wait for the right moment. We strike when they least expect it." The Zorak fleet was a terrifying sight. Hundreds of warships, bristling with weapons, advanced in a tight formation. At the center of the armada was the Reaper, the Zorak command ship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest of the human vessels. It was the symbol of Zorak dominance, and its destruction would send a powerful message. Lieutenant And, the ship's weapons officer, kept his finger hovering over the fire controls. The tension in the air was palpable. Every crew member knew the stakes. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had the element of surprise. "Target their flagship's reactor core," Riker ordered. "When we decloak, I want our first strike to count." "Aye, Captain," And replied, his voice steady despite the enormity of the task. The Prometheus continued to drift closer, undetected by the Zorak sensors. The enemy ships moved in a synchronized dance, oblivious to the silent predator among them. Riker waited, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, the Reaper was within range. The moment had come. "Decloak and fire," Riker commanded. In an instant, the Prometheus shimmered into view, its railguns blazing. Hypervelocity slugs tore through the void, striking the Reaper with pinpoint accuracy. The Zorak flagship shuddered under the impact, explosions rippling across its surface as the railgun rounds pierced its armor and slammed into the reactor core. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Chen called out, her voice filled with a mix of triumph and tension. "The Reaper's reactor is destabilizing." The Reaper's shields flared and flickered as the ship struggled to contain the damage. Inside the Zorak command ship, alarms blared, and panic spread among the crew. Warlord Kavos, the Zorak leader, roared in fury as he realized what was happening. "Return fire," Kavos bellowed. "Destroy that human ship." The Zorak fleet reacted with a vengeance. Hundreds of ships turned their weapons on the Prometheus, unleashing a storm of plasma and missiles. The Prometheus's shields flared under the barrage, and the ship rocked as it was pounded by the enemy's wrath. "Evasive maneuvers," Riker shouted. "Keep us moving." The Prometheus danced through the chaos, its advanced systems allowing it to weave through the oncoming fire. The crew worked in perfect harmony, their movements synchronized by years of training, and the shared determination to protect their home. But the Zorak were relentless. More and more ships joined the assault, their weapons filling the void with deadly energy. The Prometheus's shields began to falter, and Riker knew they couldn't keep this up for long. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," Lieutenant And warned, his voice tight with urgency. "Cloak the ship and pull back," Riker ordered. "We've done what we came to do. Now we need to live to fight another day." The Prometheus shimmered and vanished once more, slipping back into the shadows. The Zorak fleet, momentarily disoriented by the sudden disappearance of their target, hesitated. But the damage had been done. The Reaper's reactor was in critical condition, and the once mighty Dreadnought was now crippled and vulnerable. As the Prometheus retreated, the crew watched the tactical display in tense silence. The Reaper, now a shadow of its former self, began to drift, its systems failing. The Zorak fleet, stunned by the sudden and brutal attack, faltered in their advance. But Riker knew this was only the beginning. The Zorak were enraged, and they would stop at nothing to exact their revenge. The Prometheus had struck a powerful blow, but the real battle was yet to come. "Set course for the nearest human outpost," Riker ordered. "We need to regroup and prepare for the next phase." As the Prometheus sped away, the Zorak fleet slowly recovered from the shock. Warlord Kavos, his fury burning hotter than ever, vowed to hunt down the humans who had dared to strike at his heart. The battle had begun, and it would be a fight to the death. A desperate gamble. Captain Riker stood at the command center of the Prometheus, his mind racing as the ship sped through the darkness of space. The Zorak fleet had been dealt a severe blow, but they were far from defeated. Riker knew that the element of surprise would only carry them so far. The Prometheus had to return to the human colonies, warn them of the impending threat, and prepare for the coming onslaught. "We're not out of this yet," Riker muttered to himself, his eyes scanning the tactical display. The Zorak were already regrouping, and it wouldn't be long before they launched a counterattack. "Lieutenant Chen, what's our status?" Riker asked, turning to his second in command. "Shields are holding," but they've taken a beating, Chen replied. Hull integrity is at 70%. We're running low on ammunition, and our engines are overheating from the prolonged evasive maneuvers. Riker nodded grimly. The Prometheus had pushed its limits in the battle, and now they were vulnerable. But there was no time to rest. They needed to reach the nearest human outpost and deliver the warning before it was too late. Set course for Outpost Echo, Riker ordered. It's the closest station, and they'll have the resources we need to repair and resupply. Aye, Captain, Chen acknowledged, her hands flying over the controls. The Prometheus adjusted its course, engines burning hot as it raced toward safety. But even as the Prometheus sped away, the Zorak were not far behind. Warlord Kevos had ordered a full pursuit, determined to crush the human ship that had dared to challenge him. The Zorak fleet, though battered, was still formidable, and they were closing in fast. Captain, the Zorak are tracking us, Ant reported, his voice tense. They're gaining on us. Riker cursed under his breath. The Prometheus was fast, but it couldn't outrun the entire Zorak fleet. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. Suggestions? Riker asked, turning to his senior officers. We could try to lose them in the asteroid belt near Outpost Echo, Chen suggested. It's a risky maneuver, but it might buy us some time. Riker considered the idea. The asteroid belt was a treacherous region of space, filled with massive rocks and debris that could easily tear a ship apart. But it was also a natural cover, and the Zorak might hesitate to follow them into such dangerous territory. Do it, Riker decided. Take us into the asteroid belt. We'll use the debris to our advantage. Chen nodded and adjusted their course once more. The Prometheus veered sharply, heading towards the dense field of asteroids that lay ahead. The Zorak fleet, relentless in their pursuit, followed closely, their weapons locked onto the fleeing human ship. As the Prometheus entered the asteroid belt, the crew braced themselves for a harrowing ride. The ship weaved and dodged between the massive rocks, its hull grazing the edges of the deadly debris. The Zorak ships, less agile than the Prometheus, struggled to keep up, their larger size making them vulnerable to collisions. Watch out for that one, An shouted, as a massive asteroid loomed ahead. Evasive maneuvers, Riker ordered, gripping the arms of his chair. The Prometheus veered sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding a catastrophic collision. Behind them, one of the Zorak cruisers wasn't so lucky. The ship slammed into an asteroid, exploding in a fiery burst of debris and energy. Nice work, Lieutenant, Riker said, allowing himself a brief moment of relief. But their situation was still dire. The Zorak were relentless, and the asteroid belt was a double-edged sword. One wrong move could spell disaster. Captain, we can't keep this up for long, Chen warned. The engines are overheating, and our shields are failing. Riker knew she was right. The Prometheus was running out of time. They needed a miracle, and they needed it now. Prepare for emergency warp, Riker ordered. We'll make a blind jump to the far side of the asteroid belt. It's risky, but it's our only chance. Warp drive is online, Chen confirmed, her hands moving quickly over the controls. Engage, Riker commanded. The Prometheus shuddered as the warp drive activated, the stars outside the viewports stretching into long streaks of light. The ship vanished from the Zorak sensors, disappearing into the unknown. As the Prometheus hurtled through the warp, the crew held their breath, hoping against hope that they would emerge on the other side unscathed. The ship groaned under the strain, its systems pushed to the breaking point. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Prometheus dropped out of warp. The ship emerged on the far side of the asteroid belt, in a region of space that was quiet and empty. Status report, Riker demanded, his voice tense. Engines are offline, Chen replied, her voice strained. Shields are down, and we've lost most of our weapon systems. But we're alive. Riker let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. They had made it, but just barely. Good work, everyone, Riker said, his voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and relief. Let's get to Outpost Echo and hope they're ready for what's coming. Rallying the resistance. Outpost Echo was a small but well-fortified station located on the edge of human-controlled space. It served as a critical supply hub and listening post, keeping watch over the frontier. As the Prometheus limped towards the outpost, its crew was met with a flurry of activity. The station's defenses were on high alert, and the docking bays were filled with ships being prepped for battle. Captain Riker stood at the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view of Outpost Echo as they approached. The station's commander, Colonel Anaya, appeared on the view screen, her expression stern and focused. "Captain Riker, we've been monitoring your approach," Anaya said, her voice clipped. "We received your distress signal and are ready to assist. What's the situation?" Riker quickly relayed the details of their encounter with the Zorak fleet, emphasizing the urgency of the threat. Anaya listened intently, her expression growing grimmer by the second. "So, the Zorak have launched a full-scale invasion," Anaya said, her voice filled with a steely resolve. "We knew this day might come, but it's sooner than we expected." "They're coming, Colonel," Riker confirmed. "And they're not going to stop until they've crushed us. We need to prepare the colonies for war." Anaya nodded. "Understood. We'll send out an alert to all nearby colonies and rally every ship we can spare. The Prometheus will be repaired and resupplied immediately. We need you and your crew back in the fight as soon as possible." Riker acknowledged her orders, his mind already racing with the next steps. The crew of the Prometheus had been pushed to their limits, but they knew there was no time to rest. The fate of humanity depended on their ability to hold the line against the Zorak onslaught. The Prometheus was guided into one of the station's docking bays, and the crew wasted no time in getting to work. Engineers swarmed over the ship, repairing the damaged systems and rearming the weapons. Meanwhile, Riker and his senior officers met with Colonel Anaya in the station's war room, where a holographic display showed the latest intelligence on the Zorak fleet. "They've regrouped faster than we anticipated," Anaya said, pointing to the positions of the enemy ships. "They're already advancing towards the nearest colony, Meridian Prime. If they take that planet, they'll have a direct route to the core worlds. Meridian Prime is heavily fortified, but it won't hold out for long against a force like that," Riker said, studying the holographic display. "We need to strike them before they reach the planet." Anaya nodded. "Agreed. We've already dispatched several squadrons to intercept the Zorak, but we'll need every available ship to mount a proper defense. The Prometheus will lead the charge." Riker's heart swelled with determination. The odds were steep, but he knew that humanity had faced impossible challenges before and emerged victorious. This would be no different. "What's the status of our allies?" Riker asked. "Have any other species responded to the threat?" Anaya shook her head. "The Galactic Council is paralyzed by fear. Some species have pledged their support, but most are sitting on the sidelines, hoping to avoid drawing the Zorak's attention." "Typical," Riker muttered, his frustration clear. "But we can't wait for them to act. We'll have to show them that humanity is ready to fight, and that we won't go down without a fight." "Exactly," Anaya agreed. "We may be outnumbered, but we've faced worse odds before. We'll make our stand at Meridian Prime, and we'll show the galaxy what we're made of." As the meeting concluded, Riker felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Prometheus would be ready for battle soon, and they would lead the charge to defend Meridian Prime. But the captain knew that this was just the beginning. The Zorak were relentless, and the fight for humanity's survival would be long and brutal. Returning to the Prometheus, Riker addressed his crew over the ship's intercom. His voice was filled with determination as he spoke, knowing that his words would inspire those under his command. "Attention, crew of the Prometheus," Riker began. "We've been through hell and back, but our fight is far from over. The Zorak are coming for us, and they're not going to stop until they've crushed everything we hold dear. But we won't let that happen. We are the last line of defense, and we will not falter." The crew listened in silence, their resolve hardening with every word. They knew the stakes, and they were ready to give everything for the cause. "We'll be joining the defense of Meridian Prime," Riker continued. "It won't be easy, but I know we have what it takes to win this fight. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've always come out on top. This time will be no different." As Riker's speech ended, a sense of unity and determination swept through the ship. The crew knew they were about to face one of the greatest challenges of their lives, but they were ready. The Prometheus would lead the charge, and they would show the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly into the night. The Siege of Meridian Prime. The Prometheus, now fully repaired and resupplied, joined the hastily assembled fleet heading toward Meridian Prime. The planet, a vibrant and prosperous colony, was home to millions of humans, and its loss would be a devastating blow to the war effort. The Zorak knew this, and their fleet was bearing down on the planet with terrifying speed. As the fleet emerged from hyperspace, Meridian Prime came into view. The planet's orbital defenses were already firing at the approaching Zorak ships, but it was clear that they were outmatched. The Zorak fleet was massive, with warships of all sizes, each bristling with weapons designed to devastate anything in their path. "All ships, this is Captain Riker of the Prometheus," Riker announced over the fleet-wide comms. "The Zorak think they can crush us with sheer numbers, but they've underestimated our resolve. We're going to hit them hard and push them back. Focus your fire on their command ships and break their formation. Let's show them what humanity is made of." The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing as they engaged the enemy. The space around Meridian Prime erupted into a maelstrom of fire and destruction as the two fleets collided. The Prometheus, leading the charge, unleashed its railguns and missile batteries, targeting the nearest Zorak warships with precision and fury. The battle was fierce and chaotic. The Zorak ships were heavily armored and packed with firepower, but the human fleet fought with a ferocity born of desperation. The Prometheus weaved through the enemy lines, dodging plasma blasts and returning fire with deadly accuracy. Each Zorak ship that fell boosted the morale of the human defenders, but the enemy's numbers seemed endless. On the surface of Meridian Prime, the situation was equally dire. The Zorak had begun a ground assault, deploying their troops in massive dropships that rained down from the sky. The planet's defenders, a mix of military forces and civilian volunteers, fought bravely, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Riker kept a cool head, issuing orders and making quick decisions that kept the Prometheus in the fight. The ship had taken damage, but the crew worked tirelessly to keep it operational, knowing that their survival depended on their collective efforts. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal from the surface," Lieutenant Chen reported. "It's coming from Meridian City's Central Command. They're under heavy attack and requesting immediate assistance." Riker's mind raced. The fleet was barely holding the line in space, but if the Zorak took the city, the planet would fall. "Prepare a strike team," Riker ordered. "We'll take a shuttle down to the surface and assist in the defense of Meridian City. Chen, you have the bridge." "Aye, Captain," Chen acknowledged, her voice filled with resolve. Riker quickly assembled a team of Marines and engineers, each one a seasoned veteran of countless battles. They boarded the shuttle, and within minutes they were speeding towards the surface of Meridian Prime, the city's skyline visible through the cockpit window. The shuttle weaved through the atmosphere, avoiding enemy fire as it descended toward the besieged city. Explosions rocked the landscape, and the sound of gunfire filled the air. The Zorak were everywhere, their forces advancing through the streets, leaving destruction in their wake. The shuttle touched down in a heavily fortified area near the city's central command. Riker and his team disembarked quickly, weapons at the ready. The situation was grim. The city's defenders were barely holding on, their numbers dwindling with each passing moment. "Captain Riker, we're glad you're here," a harried officer said as Riker and his team arrived at the command post. "The Zorak are breaking through our lines. We won't last much longer without reinforcements. Hold the line, Riker said firmly. We're here to help, and we're not going to let this city fall. Riker's team quickly joined the battle, their advanced weapons and combat experience turning the tide in several key engagements. The Zorak, while powerful, were unprepared for the ferocity of the human counterattack. Street by street, building by building, the defenders pushed the enemy back, refusing to give an inch of ground. As the battle raged, Riker fought alongside his men, leading by example. His determination was unshakable, and his presence inspired those around him to fight harder, to dig deeper into their reserves of strength. Despite the overwhelming odds, the defenders of Meridian City held their ground. Reinforcements from other parts of the planet began to arrive, bolstering their ranks. The Zorak, realizing that they were facing far more resistance than they had anticipated, began to falter. We've pushed them back, but the battle isn't over, Riker said as he regrouped with his team. We need to take out their command center if we want to end this assault for good. The team moved swiftly through the war-torn streets, fighting off enemy patrols as they made their way to the Zorak's main staging area. The command center was heavily guarded, but Riker knew that if they could take it out, it would cripple the Zorak's operations on the planet. As they approached the command center, the resistance intensified. The Zorak had deployed their elite soldiers, and the fighting was brutal. But Riker and his team were relentless, their determination unwavering. Finally, they'd breached the command center's defenses, fighting their way inside. The Zorak commanders, caught off guard by the audacity of the human assault, were quickly overwhelmed. Riker personally planted the explosives that would ensure the destruction of the command center. Mission accomplished, Riker said as they withdrew from the building. The explosives set on a timer. Let's get out of here before this place blows. The team retreated to a safe distance, and moments later, the command center was engulfed in a massive explosion. The blast rocked the city, and the remaining Zorak forces, now leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. Back on the Prometheus, Lieutenant Chen monitored the situation from orbit. The destruction of the command center had a noticeable impact on the Zorak fleet. Their coordination faltered, and the human fleet seized the opportunity to launch a full-scale counteroffensive. Captain, the Zorak fleet is retreating, Chen reported as Riker and his team returned to the shuttle. We did it. Riker allowed himself a rare smile of satisfaction. They had won a significant victory, but he knew the war was far from over. The Zorak would regroup, and they would return. But for now, humanity had shown that it would not be easily defeated. Good work, everyone, Riker said as he addressed his crew back on the Prometheus. We've pushed them back, but we need to stay vigilant. This war is just beginning, and we'll need to be ready for whatever comes next. As the Prometheus and the rest of the fleet regrouped, the crew took a moment to reflect on their victory. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, but they knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. Captain Riker stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. The Zorak had underestimated humanity's resolve, and they had paid the price. But Riker knew that the war would only grow more intense from here. He was determined to lead his crew through whatever challenges lay ahead, no matter the cost. As the fleet prepared to return to Outpost Echo for repairs and resupply, Riker allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The battle for Meridian Prime had been won, but the fight for humanity's survival was far from over. The search for allies. The aftermath of the battle at Meridian Prime left the crew of the Prometheus weary but resolute. The Zorak had been pushed back, but Captain Riker knew that this victory was only temporary. They needed more than just determination and firepower to win this war. They needed allies. Back at Outpost Echo, the Prometheus underwent repairs alongside the rest of the battered fleet. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a growing sense of camaraderie among the crews of the various ships. They had fought together, bled together, and now they were preparing for the next phase of the war. Riker gathered his senior officers in the ship's briefing room, the air heavy with the weight of their recent experiences. Lieutenant Chen, Lieutenant Commander Vasquez, and Chief Engineer Malik were all present, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and determination. "We've proven that we can hold our own against the Zorak," Riker began, "but we can't keep fighting them alone. We need to reach out to the other species in the galaxy, show them that this war is their fight too." Lieutenant Commander Vasquez, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward, her brow furrowed in thought. "Many of them are sitting on the sidelines, too scared to take action. They know what the Zorak are capable of, and they don't want to draw attention to themselves. That's exactly why we need to change their minds," Riker said, his voice firm. "If we can convince even a few of the major powers to join us, it could turn the tide of the war. The Zorak are strong, but they're not invincible. They rely on fear to keep the galaxy in check. If we can break that fear, we can win this." Chief Engineer Malik, who had been instrumental in keeping the Prometheus running during the battle, nodded in agreement. "The more allies we have, the better our chances. We just need to show them that humanity isn't going down without a fight." Lieutenant Chen, always analytical, brought up a holographic display of the known galaxy, highlighting the regions controlled by various alien species. There are a few factions that have historically been sympathetic to humanity's cause. The Reskins, for example, they've had their own run-ins with the Zorak. If we can get them on our side, it could send a powerful message to the rest of the galaxy. Riker studied the display, his mind racing with possibilities. The Reskins were a proud and warrior-like species, known for their fierce independence. Convincing them to join the fight would be no easy task, but it was a challenge Riker was ready to take on. "Chen, Vasquez, start drafting a plan for diplomatic outreach," Riker ordered. "We'll need to send envoys to the Reskins and any other species that might be willing to join us. We'll make it clear that this war isn't just about humanity. It's about the survival of the entire galaxy." As his officers got to work, Riker felt a sense of purpose take hold. The battle for Meridian Prime had been a wake-up call. Humanity couldn't afford to fight this war alone. They needed allies, and they needed to show the galaxy that the Zorak's reign of terror could be challenged. Within days, the Prometheus was ready for its next mission. Riker had received word that the Reskins were willing to meet with a human delegation. The meeting would take place on a neutral world, far from the front lines of the war. It was a rare opportunity, and Riker knew they couldn't afford to waste it. The Prometheus set course for the neutral world of Valteris, a bustling hub of trade and diplomacy in the galaxy's outer rim. As the ship approached the planet, Riker couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The outcome of this meeting could determine the course of the war. When the Prometheus arrived at Valteris, Riker and his chosen delegation were greeted by the sight of the Reskin flagship in orbit, a massive, imposing vessel that dwarfed the human ship. The Reskins were not to be underestimated, and Riker knew he would need to tread carefully. The delegation descended to the planet's surface, where they were met by a group of Reskin officials. The Reskins were an imposing species, towering over the humans with their muscular frames and reptilian features. Their leader, General Korath, was a seasoned warrior with a reputation for both honor and ruthlessness. "Captain Riker," Korath greeted, his voice a deep rumble. "We have heard of your recent victories. It seems humanity is not as weak as some of our neighbors would have us believe." "We fight because we must," Riker replied, his tone respectful but firm. "The Zorak threaten not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. We've come to ask for your help, General. Together, we can stand against them." Korath regarded Riker with a piercing gaze, as if weighing the truth of his words. The Reskin general was not one to be swayed by sentiment or empty promises. He needed to see strength, resolve, and a clear path to victory. "You speak of unity," Korath said slowly. "But what can humanity offer us that we cannot achieve on our own? The Reskin Empire has no love for the Zorak, but we do not rush into battles without purpose." Riker knew this moment was crucial. He had to convince Korath that an alliance was in their mutual interest, that together they could achieve what neither could alone. "I won't insult your intelligence by pretending this war will be easy," Riker said, meeting Koreth's gaze. "But I believe we can win, and I believe that with the Reskins by our side, we'll have the strength to turn the tide. The Zorak have terrorized the galaxy for too long, and they've grown overconfident. They think they're invincible, but we've already shown them that they can be beaten. Join us, and we'll bring the fight to them, together." Koreth remained silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The tension in the air was palpable, as the fate of the potential alliance hung in the balance. Finally, the Reskin general nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. "Very well, Captain Riker. The Reskins will stand with humanity in this war. But know this, we do not fight for glory or honor. We fight to win. If you falter, if you show weakness, we will not hesitate to withdraw our support." Riker inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Understood, General. We won't let you down." With that, the alliance between humanity and the Reskins was forged. It was a fragile alliance, built on mutual necessity and respect. But it was a start. As Riker and his delegation returned to the Prometheus, he couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. They were no longer alone in this fight. The galaxy was beginning to awaken to the threat of the Zorak, and together they would stand against it. The battle for unity. The alliance with the Reskins was a significant step forward, but Captain Riker knew that it was just the beginning. If humanity was to have any chance of defeating the Zorak, they needed to rally more of the galaxy's species to their cause. The challenge was monumental. Many species remained fearful, unwilling to risk drawing the Zorak's wrath. But Riker was determined to change that. Back on the Prometheus, the crew prepared for their next mission, a diplomatic tour to key worlds where they would make their case for unity. The Reskins had agreed to accompany them, lending their strength and reputation to the effort. It was a bold move, one that could either solidify the alliance or drive potential allies further away. Their first stop was the world of Velora, home to the technologically advanced Velorians. The Velorians were known for their neutrality and their reluctance to involve themselves in galactic conflicts. But Riker hoped that the recent Zorak aggression would be enough to sway them. The Prometheus and the Reskin flagship entered orbit around Velora, their arrival causing a stir among the planet's leaders. The Velorians were cautious by nature, and their decision-making process was notoriously slow. Riker knew he would have to be patient, but also persuasive. The Velorian Council convened in a grand chamber, its walls adorned with intricate patterns of light and energy, a reflection of their advanced technology. The Velorians themselves were tall, slender beings with luminous skin and eyes that glowed with an inner light. They were a people of intellect and reason, and Riker knew that appealing to their logic would be key. Captain Riker, the head of the council, Speaker Thelios, greeted him with a calm, measured tone. "We are aware of your recent victories and your alliance with the Reskins. But we must ask, why should Velora involve itself in a war that does not directly threaten our world?" Riker had anticipated this question, and he had prepared his response carefully. "Speaker Thelios, the Zorak have shown that they will not stop until they have conquered the entire galaxy. They may not have reached Velora yet, but they will. And when they do, they will show no mercy. This isn't just humanity's fight. It's a fight for the survival of every free species in the galaxy." The council members exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful. Riker could see that his words had struck a chord, but he knew that it wouldn't be enough on its own. "Velora is a beacon of knowledge and progress," Riker continued, his voice steady and sincere. "If you join us, you will not only be protecting your own world, but also helping to preserve the very foundations of civilization in the galaxy. The Zorak seek to destroy all that we hold dear, our cultures, our freedoms, our future. But together, we can stand against them." There was a long silence as the council deliberated. Riker could feel the weight of the moment, knowing that the future of the alliance rested on their decision. Finally, Speaker Thelios spoke, his voice filled with resolve. "Captain Riker, The Valorian people value peace above all else, but we also recognize that sometimes peace must be defended. We will join your alliance with the understanding that our resources will be used to seek a swift and decisive end to this war." Riker nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "Thank you, Speaker Thelios. Your support will make a difference, and I promise that we will do everything in our power to bring this war to a just and swift conclusion." With the Valorians now part of the alliance, the momentum began to build. One by one, other species that had once remained on the sidelines started to join the cause. The coalition grew stronger with each new ally, and the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. But Riker knew that the real test was still to come. The Zorak would not sit idly by while the galaxy united against them. They would strike back, and when they did, it would be with all the fury they could muster. As the Alliance prepared for the next phase of the war, Riker found himself once again standing on the bridge of the Prometheus, gazing out at the stars. The galaxy was on the brink of a new era, one where unity and cooperation could overcome even the darkest of threats. But Riker also knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. The Zorak were relentless, and the battle for the galaxy's future was far from over. But with allies by their side, and a growing sense of purpose, humanity and its newfound friends were ready to face whatever came next. The war was just beginning, but for the first time, Riker felt that victory was within reach. They would fight, they would endure, and they would triumph, because together they were stronger than the sum of their parts.